everyone, and welcome to the 10th annual edition of the Innovate Finance Global Summit, IFGS 2024. It is awesome to be here with all of you this morning. And firstly, a huge thank you to every single one of you who've helped to make this possible. A massive thank you to our gold sponsors for this event, ClearPay, Square, DBT, and Barclays Rise. Thank you to the City of London for hosting us today in your beautiful and historic Guildhall. A massive thank you to the Innovate Finance team who have worked so hard to put this together, especially Haley Sedgwick, Amelia Martinez, and Amy Jurgen. For the whole team, we're 25 people, guys, so the whole team. A big thank you to our brilliant board, and especially our amazing chair, Lou Smith. Also to our event partner, Seven Hills, who've been with us throughout the years. And then most importantly, a huge thank you to every single one of our Innovate Finance members here today for all of your support and for inspiring us over and throughout the entire year. I've got to say, I can't quite believe that this is the 10th anniversary of our Global Summit. I've been with Innovate Finance since our first summit back in 2015 in various positions before I took over as CEO 3 years ago. And when I sat down to write my remarks for this morning, I have to say I really struggled. How do you describe a decade of transformation? In fact, let's be real, an entire overhaul of an industry in just a few minutes. Now, I thought maybe you could talk about the progress we've made over the past decade. So where are we today? The fact that 8 out of every 10 adults in the UK are using at least one fintech tool on a regular basis. The fact that nearly 60% of all SME lending across the entirety of the United Kingdom is being done by fintechs, by challenger banks or alternative lenders. Or maybe you could talk about the fact that the UK boasts 10% of global fintech market share. And last year, despite a pretty difficult economic year for all sectors, still received more than 5.1 billion US dollars of investment coming into UK fintech. Second only in the world, behind the United States, and ahead of pretty much all of Europe combined. Or maybe you could talk about some of the specific journeys that fintechs, which launched the very same year as our first global summit in 2015, have had. Take Revolut, for example, who 10 years on have more than 40 million customers around the world. Or Oak North, who has lent more than £10 billion to SMEs across the United Kingdom. Or Monzo Bank, who earlier this year reached their 9 million personal account customers and who topped the CMA league table of banks most likely to be recommended by their customers to families and friends, surpassing banks who've been around for decades. Or maybe you could talk about how, according to our recently released report with Accenture last year, 98% of fintechs are having a positive impact on the UK economy, with more than a quarter directly addressing inequality, and more than a third supporting institutions that foster greater social justice and peace. You could talk about all of this when you look to summarize our sector. But then I realized that the best way to summarize UK fintech, it isn't to look back, but it's to look forward. Because that's what our industry has always done. We've looked ahead to the future. We've taken the status quo and we've said, how can we make it better? We've identified where positive change is possible, and then we've delivered on that change. And I do mean deliver, and I mean drive, because we are not an ecosystem that values talk or words. We are an ecosystem that values action. And the statistics I mentioned earlier prove that. When we first launched IFGS and Innovate Finance 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about a fintech revolution. Right? And that phrase died out as maturity came into the sector. But actually, I would argue that what we have seen over the last decade, it's nothing short of a revolution. And it's one that continues to be ongoing. It is a revolution that has put the customer back where they belong, at the center of our industry. And it is a revolution that has created enormous value. The top 30 fintechs in the UK are valued at more than £70 billion. And it is a revolution that continues to harness new and emerging technologies in a way that has the potential to make our sector, make financial services work better than it ever has before in the next decade. And that's what this year's IFGS is all about. The next 10 years, the next decade, our vision for financial services to come. Where do we want to be as an industry in 10 years' time? And most importantly, what do we have to do to get there? What is our vision for the next decade? And what do you as industry need from government and from regulators to help you continue doing what you do and to drive more value? And how can all of us work together to realize that vision? So, FinTech's Next Gen. Over the next few days, you'll hear a lot about things such as our Innovate Finance FinTech Manifesto, which lays a pathway forward and has 3 big ambitions for the next government. Number 1, make the UK the world's first smart data economy. Number 2, make the UK the most secure and the safest place in the world for consumers and businesses to use digital finance. And number 3, make the UK the best place to adopt new technology in financial services. You will also hear in the coming days about our Unicorn Council, which met this morning with the EST, which is co-founded by Zilch, co-chaired with Clearbank and with Revolut, and brings together the CEOs of the largest fintechs to ensure they stay, grow, scale, and list here in the UK for the benefit not just of our sector, but for consumers across the country. And let's remember, it's as important that we support those early stage companies, because the startups of today will be the unicorns of tomorrow. So you'll hear about our Innovate Finance FinTech Academy. We'll do a deep dive into the investment trends. You'll hear from some incredible fintech firms tomorrow at our Pitch 360 event. And we are also going to be looking at how important it is to keep strong governance and ensure you have a proper board throughout all stages of your journey. And we're delighted to release today a report in collaboration with EY on setting the pace or keeping up, our FinTech board's future fit. We are also going to look at how we can support fintechs outside of London and the Southeast. And again, we're delighted to release a report with Streets Consulting and Whitecap Consulting on scaling UK regional fintech. And we're going to do a deep dive into the tech that is underpinning this revolution. What does AI mean, really, for our sector? How do we ensure responsible adoption, and where are we on the hype curve? Let's talk about RegTech, and we released a report last week with City of London on the RegTech test, identifying the policy impact on compliance. And what about open banking? How do we move from there through to open finance? And again, we're really pleased to release a report in collaboration with our partner KPMG on the open finance roadmap. And alongside the excitement of harnessing these new technologies, we have to have some serious conversations about mitigating and managing the risks. How do we ensure responsible and ethical adoption? How do we protect the consumer? And how do we reduce fraud? And also, how do we drive inclusion and diversity across our sector, which is so important for our continued success as an industry? And finally, we will hear from regulators on their priorities, and we'll hear from government and the opposition on what FinTech means to them and what they plan to do to continue supporting this thriving sector of our economy. So in closing, we've got a jam-packed agenda for you over the next 2 days. Lots to get through. You know, I'm looking out here, and I have to say, I see so many of you that have been with us on the journey since 10 years ago, since day one of Innovate Finance and IFGS. And I just want to say, I'm getting a bit emotional, I want to say a huge thank you to every single one of you for being with us in that journey. It's meant so much to myself and to the entire Innovate Finance team over the years. And equally, a very warm welcome to those of you that are joining IFGS for the first time. Here in the UK, we have, without a doubt, the very best fintech ecosystem in the entire world. So over the next few days, I ask you to reflect on all of the incredible achievements you've made with your hard work, with your passion, with your commitment. But I also ask you to really look at the enormous opportunities that lie ahead in the next 10 years. People said to us at our first global summit that we were an ecosystem of dreamers. We might be dreamers, but we're also doers. And I would argue that when you bring those two characteristics together, a dreamer and a doer, anything is possible. So watch this space and imagine how far we can go and how much we can achieve in the next 10 years together. So thank you and have a wonderful IFGS and UK FinTech Week.